is incredibly critical to your success as a leader. So I am going to ask you to also consider not just your role as a husband, as a elder, as a pastor, but primarily think of yourself as a leader. And what is some of the essence of what being a leader is? And I think when we talk a lot about some of the very specific skills, there's a lot of things about what the character aspects of leadership are. We're going to put those aside. We're going to talk about what are some skills that can help us be more effective, godly leaders in our church and in our community. And I think what we're going to talk about today, I think, is really going to speak to the heart of this. And I can tell you that the things that we're going to discuss, I can tell you I've done at least one of these things, or every one of these things, well, at least one time. And I can tell you that I've done every one of these things poorly at least one time. So I'm not there yet. I am still pressing on towards the goal which God has called me heavenward, all right? So, as we all are. So, thank you for accepting that and bearing with me. So, where's my clicker? So, I did give Scott a 3-page introduction, but clearly he lost that. And did I lay the intro? There it is, sorry. I've been 27 years in nonprofit Christian leadership. The last almost 3 years at Sunset Retirement Communities in Jenison. We have four facilities, serve about 1,000 people a year. I do marketing and fundraising. So enjoying that. Before that, I was 24 years at Hope Network. Started out as a driver there while I was still at school, and never thought that would be a career. Never thought about a career. Just tried to grow wherever I was planted at the time. So the one of the skills that is essential to effective leadership is a relationship, right? And in order to have good, meaningful relationships, we need to have good conversations. And unfortunately, we do not. And in particular, we struggle with conflict. And we will go to great, amazing lengths to avoid conflict. And conflict management, crucial conversations, if you will, is not intuitive. It is not innate. It is a learned behavior. So if we're talking about how can I be a better leader, how can I have more meaningful, more successful, more critical, successful conversations, we need to think hard and long about how we can improve our conversations, simply put. So any of you have any meaningful conversations today? Right? And they're enjoyable, they're enriching, they're inspiring. Unfortunately, the majority of our effectiveness as a leader has to do with a small percentage of our conversations, and that's when things become critical. And let me just give you a little bit of a background, and then we're going to talk about some very specific skills. Some research was done in hospitals, and they looked at why are so many people dying in hospitals. And you'd be surprised at this. 1 out of 20 patients in a hospital will be given wrong medication. 3.5 million people will get an infection from somebody at the hospital, either by not washing their hands or not following procedures. And this blew me away. Each year, 195,000 people die as a result from mistakes while they are at a hospital. How big is Grand Rapids, right? 500,000. That's the whole Kent County and so forth. I think the proper is probably some portion of that. But you can imagine wiping out Kalamazoo, the going away by mistakes. It didn't happen. And here's what's so startling about that, and this ties into crucial conversations. When the surveyed, 84% of doctors said they saw coworkers take shortcuts and endanger patients. 84% of doctors said they saw that. 88% of doctors said they work with people who show poor clinical judgment. However, when this is observed research, fewer than 10% of physicians, nurses, and clinical staff directly confront those colleagues about their concerns, even though it may mean the difference between life and death. That is just startling to me. We will go to great lengths to avoid conversations. the discussion that we're talking about today, you can verify my understanding. I'm going to give you an hour a conversation about this Crucial Conversations book. It's Vital Smarts. They do really good stuff. And this normally is a 4-hour session. It can be turned into an 8-hour session because when you're learning skills, you got to practice them, right? We don't have the time to do that today. So I'm going to go over them with their head, but understand we're going to try to have a couple takeaways that you can actually put into practice and remind yourself going forward. So this is not innate. These concepts are learned. So can you everybody see that okay? So there are amazing points in throughout a conversation where they have a disproportionate influence. If we can recognize those crucial moments, I like to call them a hazardous half minute, it can make the world of difference between moving towards a positive direction or spiraling out of control. And we'll show some examples of that in a bit here. Crucial Conversations, I believe, is tapped up into 3 major areas. There is when you have opposing positions, when you have strong emotions, or that the stakes are high. Have you had any conversations where there's some strong emotions at play? You walk into halfway through a committee meeting and you can just feel the tension, right? It's palpable, right? Strong emotions, where you have very smart individuals going after wildly important and audacious goals and have different opinions about how to get there. Have you had really smart people in a room who disagree about what the next step is or how to get there? Godly people who really want the best but have opposing positions? Or when you say, we need to get this right or else, when the stakes are that critical. You've had those conversations. What do we do in those moments is an essence of what we can call a good leadership and good skills related to leadership. I'm having a hard time. I need one more set of hands here. Okay, so the crucial moments, what are these? They are moments that have disproportionate impact, and it could relate to satisfaction, it could relate to quality or trust in teams, and we've all seen examples of that. Just as you're thinking about what those things are, and I've given you some examples of that, can you think of a situation that you have in your environment and your role as leaders where you see some of these things, crucial conversations come up? Can you give me an example? Something that comes to mind. What is a crucial conversation that you've dealt with recently? Thanks, John. And opposing positions, right? Opposing opinions, right? And good people, well-intended, but very convicted about that. How do we get to a good place there? Is there a methodology? Is there X, Y, Z that we can follow? Is there a little linear process we can follow? It's going to take some skills to manage that. And I think if you're anything like me, you've developed those skills by trial and error, right? What's worked, what's successful, how am I built, what makes sense to me, how gifted am I, how much influence, how much authority I have in those particular given situations. And I have to say, some of that times when I rely on those types of things, I'm really not getting at to the true core, and it just shows up a little bit later. I kind of get us by, you know. I try to work my charisma to try to do that. You're all pastors here. You're on that. You have charisma, right? And so when we rely too much on that, we might be overlooking and not going as deep as I'm not talking about your situation. I'm just generalizing it, and so forth. So how do we get to that deeper level? How do we find a way to connect in those moments that work in a better way? So we talked about the hazardous half minute. Problems exist because, truthfully, we are working towards super awesome goals. Does anybody here have a mission that isn't important? No. No. Do you have any goals for this year that, I don't know, it'd be nice? No. We have this burden and responsibility to carry out God's vision and the vision for your community and your church. These are really important. Unfortunately, we don't have all the resources all the time to get things done, and we need to marshal people together in a unified, shared vision. So when we have these goals, when we have these conflicts, it's not a result of poor leadership. It is a result of good leadership. It needs to be embraced, but it's not because we struggle with the how-tos. We don't want to leave anybody behind. We overly compensate for unity with. And I'll talk about this later, but buying into this false dichotomy that if I deal with the true root of the issue, I'm going to lose that constituent. I'm going to lose that friendship. I'm going to have disharmony in my church. What if there was a way that we could lovingly, compassionately, respectfully deal with the underlying issues with things and still keep that person engaged? And I would have to say, and I would throw this out there probably isn't any other way to truly have the ideal unless we do deal with things in the root area. Make sense? Right. So when we have these opposing opinions and these difficulties here, how you like my little success coach? Can everybody see that okay? So there are two options, and I think this is really interesting. And ever since when I first read this and started thinking about this has worked. This has been the case every time. We have two options when we have these hazardous half minutes, these areas of conflict. We either talk it out and share our concerns, or we act it out. And this promotes behavior that usually makes things work. And unfortunately, that's the case. We talked about this, having to choose between you often have to choose between telling the truth and keeping a friend. That's a false dichotomy, and we're going to offer a different way of looking at things. Because sometimes it's not just duck season or rabbit season. It might be bear season. There might be another option available to us, and we'll talk about that. So here's what I want you to do. If you can grab a pen or a piece of paper or just take a mental note. That's so funny. I said pen and paper. Cameron, if you could pull out your tablet. And I would like you to identify, because I think the health of any organization, including our churches, can be determined by the number of crucial conversations you are not having. The number of crucial conversations you're not having. So I want you to think right now, identify 2 or 3 crucial conversations that most affect achievement of your mission. We're going to come back to these at the end. And then identify one of those, what might be the most important.
Are you saying crucial conversations that need to happen?
Yes. Or one that maybe you're in the middle of, right? Or you're trying to work through it right now. So are you that aren't working through right now, or need to happen, you just know it, right? This is going to come down based on your experience and wisdom, and you know how things happen. This is going to come to a head, right? So think about that. 2 or 3 crucial conversations that most affect achievement of your mission. And our job then is to model, teach, and coach, using John's example, right? He's got to somehow coach that in the lives of others, and how well you're doing as an organization. So that really is, I believe, an essential skill of effective leadership, okay? We're in relationship. We have super awesome goals. We're going to have conflict. We're going to have varying opinions. There is no roadmap already laid out with God's stamp on it. Okay? We have well-intended individuals. Emotions get high because we have investments at different levels, and the stakes are high. How important is your vision? Well, it's pretty important. So write out a brief description, a crucial conversation you maybe had or planning to have, or maybe, if we're honest with ourselves, are avoiding. So the roadmap to super awesome goals, we have these hazardous half minutes, these moments in our conversations with individuals where we have good intentions, and then somebody throws some emotion out there, and somebody gets a little defensive, and it could go left or right. And I think when we do great conversations well, we recognize those crucial conversations, that hazardous half minute, and we steer the conversation to a path that leads us further down towards our super awesome goal. Or we behave poorly and find ourselves in a rut that we just cannot get out of. And you know what happens when we go in a rut? We make those ruts deeper every time, don't we? And they're very easy to go back in it. And it's kind of like sin, isn't it? Those ruts, once we use them, they're harder to avoid. Interpersonal dimension. So this human connection is extremely important. Your power as leaders is in relationship, and that relationship is in that human connection. This accelerates our growth as human beings, and I would dare say that if we aren't doing these conversations great, we don't have an opportunity to have what we really want, meaningful, rich, lasting relationships. And so these are the skills that we're going to talk about here. And we're going to hit them all, and then we're going to start unpacking them as we go, and then we'll have a couple exercises and then follow through with some takeaways. Sound good? The first skill is to start with the heart. I'm going to go, and we'll unpack them later, okay? And then you want to learn to identify when those crucial conversations are. Then try to find a way to make it safe. This is incredibly crucial, and we'll emphasize why. We need to master our own stories. We need to explore others' path, and we need to take action. So that's our framework that we're going to be discussing here. Start with the heart. Did I go too quickly here? There's 6. I'm sorry. There are 6. The seventh one wasn't really good, so we took that off. That you have to read the book. Yeah, it's in the book. Start with the heart. Focus on what you really want. So this is really important step. One of the critical things about leadership: a leader who does not aware of self could do more harm than good. Self-awareness is a key essential component to build on successful leadership. So first things first, when you're in the middle of a conversation, what do you really want? What am I acting like I really want? Which is a powerful question. And what do I really want for me, others, and relationship? When I first dealt with this, I struggled with this because about leaders, we're servant leaders, we deny self, right? It's all about others, anything like that. But I'm telling you what, if you want to have meaningful conversations, you need to recognize this, because this will show up in your tone, in your dialogue, in the words you choose, in the silence that you go to, maybe even acting out. Understanding self is incredible. So this is one step where I do not want you to deny self. I want you to understand, what do you really want out of this conversation, and be honest with it, okay? Be honest with it. And I'll use myself as an example. I had an opportunity I had a hazardous half minute yesterday. Did not go well, okay? We were having a pipeline meeting. We're opening up a new facility. It needs to be filled up really fast. We have 40 residents. It's costing us about $80,000 a month in lost revenue every time every month that the facility stays open. So we have our pipeline meeting. We got 40 leads in the pipeline, and one of the sales team goes, well, we're going through the 40 that we have, and okay, what's the story on this one? What's the story on this one? What do this one needs? Well, I just sent them a packet. Well, what package did you send them? Well, that flyer and the price sheet. Okay, boom. You're sending a price sheet, the first contact when we're just now. I couldn't even talk. What are you doing sending a price sheet? Do they know what we're serving? This is a blue ocean strategy. This is something that's never been done before. How do you compare us with anything else? You send them a price sheet. Not a good way to have a crucial conversation. Okay, so can we all agree that the price sheet's a bad idea? Can we all agree that? Guess what she responded? She stood up, put her feet, I could almost see her heels going right into the carpet. And she said, well, I disagree with you. put on a sweater, and was ready to walk out. That's a great example of how not to have a crucial conversation, right? Attacking. I needed to understand, what was my story? What did I want out of that? Well, truthfully, I want us to be successful. I want her to be successful. I want us to be successful. And in doing that, we got to find out the right way to do things. But she didn't feel safe. What did she hear? Attacking. Dan doesn't think I know how to do my job, right? Dan's telling me and my boss and everything that I'm doing things wrong, right? Then I am the villain, right? She's the victim, right? You can see why. You can see why. Understanding my own approach. So I needed to do that better. Learn to look. Look for when conversations become critical. Look for safety problems. Look for our own style under stress. When I'm under stress, I lean forward. I get tense. Let's get going here. Let's rumble. The game is on. Let's play. The whistle's blown. The ball's up in the air. Let's go. Let's win. We can do this. Others might have a different way to look at that. So in that moment when I was behaving poorly, just yesterday, I needed to, about halfway in, I said, wait a minute, this is not going well. So when did you realize that, Dan? Well, when she stood up and put her sweater on, that's when it became evident to me that there's a crucial conversation going on here, and I'm not looking. So if I saw that a little earlier, it would have saved a lot of needless conversations today, right? Needless conversations today. Am I going to silence or violence, right? What did she do? She went to silence, right? I don't need this. I'm backing out. I'm moving out of it. I'm getting away from this. This is not safe, right? And then what am I doing? Well, when I leaned in, she pulled back. Learn to look. One of the most important pieces of these 6 steps is to make it safe. Apologize when appropriate. So guess what I did an hour after the meeting? Chris, I'm sorry how it came across. You can do your job. I know you can. You filled up this facility, and you know how to talk to people. You do that better than anybody I know. Thank you for that. We're not going to be successful unless you're successful, and I am invested into your success. I still was getting a cold shoulder. It took more than that, right? But I needed to apologize. If I came in there with anything else less than that, what would I have got? She might have walked out of her own office, right? So, and then I needed to contrast. This is extremely valuable skill, contrasting. I am not saying that you are not good at your job. I'm not saying that you are bad at your job. What I am saying is, with this new model, we have to sell and market very differently than we've ever done before. You are very good at the old way of doing things, and I'm not saying that you aren't. And I'm not saying that you're not going to be successful moving forward. I said that a lot better in the meeting. At least it sounded in my own mind than I am right now. But I am saying that we have to. So you're contrasting, right? I'm getting black on white is a lot better than blue on gray, right? Contrasting. The better you can get at contrasting, you're able to create a safer place to have future conversations. I'm not saying this. I am saying this. Have you used that tool? Powerful, powerful tool. Keep it ready in your toolbox. And the crib principle. This is about mutual purpose. And the key to making it safe, mutual respect. I needed to show her that I respect her qualifications and her skills to do this job. Secondly, I needed to say, we are both after the same thing. We have mutual purpose. So what can we agree on? That this is a fun one. Because sometimes it's not, when things are really bad and really intense, you say, okay, we're really trying to do the same thing here. We're both, and then when it's that bad, no, I don't think you really are. Then you have to go back farther up, go higher up on the chain. Well, we both want this organization to be successful. We both want this endeavor to be successful. We're both after the same thing. We really want to we want to make this new program, this men's ministry, successful, right? So we're both after that. And that becomes an important anchor. Anytime you feel things going out of control, go back to safety. Mutual purpose, mutual respect. Actually, mutual respect first, and then mutual purpose. And if you feel things slipping away, most likely it's tied to one of these two elements. Establish mutual respect and mutual purpose. Recognize the purpose behind the strategy. What I'm being there is look deeper. Look deeper on this. The strategy is an outcome, is an expression of something that's going on. It's a strategy. It's a tactic to get what they want. So what are they really going? What's your strategy? Look at the tactics you're taking. Does that tell me about what I really want, or what I'm really afraid of, or really what I'm trying to protect? Look beyond the tactics. If you have to, invent mutual purpose and brainstorm new strategies. But that in that order. Commit, recognize, invent, and brainstorm. So, Christian, so we have an interesting conversation. It's in the corporate world, but I'm sure you all can relate how it can go south real quick.
Rick, I wanted to take a minute to update you about the Larry situation.
What situation?
Well, we'll be giving him notice sometime tomorrow.
What? We're firing him? He's the only one around here with any real design skills.
True, he's talented, but he can't get along with anyone on his team.
Well, can we at least talk about it? I'd like to consider both sides of the issues before we take action. Would that be okay?
Sure. We can each share our views and see where that takes us, hopefully to a place where we're both satisfied.
Sounds good.
Go ahead.
Okay. I get the fact that he can be a bit prickly to work with, but the designs he's created over the past half a year have been nothing short of spectacular. It took us 3 years to find someone with his talent.
He may be good. I'm not sure he's that good. In any case, I'm the one who ends up listening to his colleagues complain about his abusive style.
True, but I'm not sure we've offered him much help. It seems to me that when people have complained to you, you've asked them to talk to him directly. I'm not sure that's the most helpful coaching.
Are you suggesting I went about it the wrong way?
All I know is that you're the one who's always telling everyone how we need to give people a chance, make sure we're giving feedback and all that stuff, and now you just want to throw him out in the street?
Well, excuse me if I care about the other 150 people who have to put up with him. What about them?
Now you're just twisting my words. You see, this is why it can be hard to talk to you.
Oh, so now it's about me?
No, it's about Larry. And yeah, he's ruffled a few feathers with employees who everyone knows are far too sensitive in the first place, and then bang, you pull the trigger.
This isn't some knee-jerk reaction, Rick. This is the result of a lot of thought. Do you think I get some sort of pleasure out of letting someone go? Or that the complaints against him have been exaggerated? Do you think I get some sort of...
Have you been in meaningful conversations, well-intended, and it goes south really quick? I can relate to this, right? Because you're dealing with your own stuff. He's advocating for his team, right? And what is she doing? She's advocating for the other 200, right? Smart, well-intended individuals going south. Can you relate? Yeah. Let's see where it goes from here.
Do you think I get some sort of pleasure out of letting someone go? Or that the complaints against him have been exaggerated?
I'm sorry. I didn't want this to digress into a heated debate, and I really didn't want to launch an attack. I just value Larry and his work a lot, and I wanted to plead his case, and I sort of got hooked. I'm afraid I've done him more harm than good. Could I start over?
Sure.
Thank you. I'd really like to explore a coaching option. I know we've given Larry feedback, but I really don't think we've done enough. You know, he's a good guy, and...
Wow. Did you see the leadership there? How much strength, how much leadership did he display in that moment? That's pretty powerful, wasn't it? He changed the whole trajectory of that whole conversation. He backed it up, apologized. I think I've done him more harm than good. What a humble, powerful, amazing statement. I believe in that moment, that is a picture of leadership in action right there. Changed the whole trajectory. Might have saved somebody's job and maybe his as well. But that whole relationship, powerful, powerful stuff. Thank you, Christian. I keep leaving it over here, don't I? Okay. He apologized. Thank you. He apologized when he needed to, backed it up. The powerful stuff. So my story, my path. This is a little bit fuzzy sometimes. This takes self-awareness and understanding in the moment. So what we need to do is separate the fact from the story, and then we need to tell our real story. When we're able to tell what we really want and communicate that at a deeper level, we're actually helping the conversation move forward. People don't have to guess, right? They can know what we're really trying to go after if we're honest with ourselves. So what role am I playing with the problem? Okay? Clearly, he recognized his role. I've done more harm than good here. I apologize. Can we back up? Very respectful, very appropriate. And this, I think, is one of the most powerful questions you could ever ask in a crucial conversation. This is your other major tool in your toolbox. Why would a reasonable, rational person act the way they're acting, and why? Powerful thing. Attributing reasonableness. Powerful tool. It is not always easy because we really kind of want to justify our own feelings with how we're feeling about that person right then, right? To then have to suspend that, that's a lot of joy for me, at least in the moment, and I have to say, okay, why would a reasonable person act that way? You know what? Well, she's just trying to do what's right relationship to all the other individuals approaching her, okay? Why would my friend Chris in our pipeline meeting react the way she reacted? Well, she felt attacked in front of her boss and felt that I didn't think she was doing or knows how to do her job. That's reasonable. That's a reasonable conclusion to come to based on the conversation. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry for not clarifying that. Yes, why would a reasonable person be acting that way? And am I open to their view? So the first step is, what is my role? Understanding my story and telling it, what my role is in the problem. Why would a reasonable person be acting the way they're acting? And am I really open to others people's viewing? So we haven't yet got to the point where we can tell them that they're wrong. We haven't got to the point we can tell them all the reasons why their idea won't work. We haven't got to that point yet. In fact, that might be number 7, John. And this illustration is a perfect example. And I don't know if you can really see this, but you have to buy the book just for this alone. And I think this best illustrates that whole my story, telling my story or not. Where do our behaviors come from? And our emotions inspire some of those behaviors. Well, that's in part a lot true. Well, where do the emotions come from? What are those emotions that we're trying to control and manage? Because we're an emotionally intelligent individual. We understand our own emotions, those around us, and we're acting appropriately in between that. So that means we can't always rely on our impulses, right? So where do these emotions then come from that are making it so difficult to behave well? This picture does this very well. So I don't know if you can see that. See this, what we see and observe informs the story we tell ourselves, and that evokes feelings, and then in a lot of cases we act on those feelings. And this is our story, this is our trajectory, and then this is the other person's. They have the same path. And the most meaningful step in that process that goes on underneath is what story you're telling ourselves. And we tell ourselves 3 different stories, 3 categories of stories. I'm a victim. That other person or that other person is a villain, or I'm helpless to do anything. Most every story we tell ourselves, and most every story someone else tells themselves, can be, in a general sense, fit into one of those 3 stories. I'm a victim here, they're the villain, or I'm helpless, I cannot do anything about it. And we're able to recognize that and then in ourselves and be able to express that in a helpful way. We put all that into this inside pool, inside of safety. We really have an opportunity to have great conversations, okay? Leaders need to go there first. Leaders need to lead in this area. We're going to come back to this and illustrate it because it's so important. So, Christian, if we can have the next video.
I agree. We need to pick the client up from the airport, but we are not using a limo service. It is over the top and totally unnecessary.
Well, that's just great. Why don't we just throw them into the back of a pickup? I've got a backpacking tent and a sleeping bag they could use in the parking lot. That should make you an even bigger hero with accounting.
Is that what you think of me? That I'm just out to get some sort of recognition?
Hey, don't get defensive with me. But it does seem that what's more important to you is saving money rather than making money. I don't know who you're striking a pose for, but it certainly isn't the client.
Is that what you think of me? That I'm someone who just cares about myself and nothing else?
I don't know, Trenton. Search your own heart. All I know is that I get no support from you when it comes to doing what's best to win new business. There's got to be some motive behind what you're doing.
You are out of control, Jordan. You know, I don't have to take this from you. You know what? You spend what you want to spend, but I am not signing off on your expense reports. You are on your own. I agree. We need to pick
Go ahead. Thanks, Christian.
up the clients at the airport, but we are not using a limo. It is over the top and totally unnecessary.
Can we take a minute to talk about something that's a concern to me? I think we'd both benefit from the discussion.
We are talking about the limo, and I am not taking any more flack from corporate over wasteful and self-serving spending.
Well, I'd like to talk about what our spending priorities should be. When I brought up the idea of having a limo meet the clients at the airport, you made a final statement that we aren't using a limo service.
And we aren't using a limo service. It is not an option.
I don't think we should do it needlessly either. In this case, the client has a tight turnaround, only an hour to spend with us. If we let them get a rental car like last time, we may end up with only 30, 40 minutes for our pitch. We don't have anyone who can pick them up. Now, we've been over these points before, and you don't seem to disagree with them. That makes me wonder if the reason you want to forego the limo is to avoid having to justify the expense with corporate, even if it might be a wise decision. Is that part of what's going on here, or am I jumping to conclusions?
That's not it exactly.
Well, if you see it differently, I'd like to hear your view.
Well, to be honest, we've had so many receipts coming in that have been seemingly excessive. I've had to go back and forth with corporate just to get them paid. I feel like I'm losing credibility with them. My fear is that they'll limit our budget if I come at them with something like this.
Well, did you see those couple good steps he made? Asked for permission, restated his recognition, even though he was still getting hammered, right? The corporate accountant guy, still hammering him, right? Still hammering him, still making his case. He was still in that, I am a victim here. That's the story he was telling himself, wasn't it? I got corporate coming on my side, now you come on my side, and no one appreciates the position I'm in. So you see the leadership that the salesman exercise by still staying on, not responding the same way. That's leadership in an essence, in a microcosm. He stayed on, said, okay, I hear you. And then he gave permission, which is a powerful statement. Am I understanding it right, or is there another way? Is there another perspective here? Powerful statements there. Well-intended individuals, lots of pressure, right? But still having real disagreements. Someone had to step up and show leadership. Thanks, Christian. So real quickly, we're going to go through these, explore other person's paths. Ask, mirror, paraphrase, and prime is self-evident. The another option is to build, agree, build, and compare. And there, start with an agreement. Agree where you can agree. Build when others leave out pieces. Point out areas of agreement. Avoid trivializing over small details. That finally, that the accountant responded and go, well, you don't have it exactly right, but boy, it took a while, but he was able to look over the fact that he didn't get the story 90 and 100% right, but it was only after a significant investment by the leader in that story. And then compare your paths. When you differ, suggest you differ instead of concluding that you are wrong. Boy, we never get to say the other person's wrong. That's not the training I signed up for, right? When you disagree, say, I believe we have a different opinion about this. Let me describe how that things are different. And you're able to state, there's a great, powerful statement that you're able to get your story out there and your understanding of that other person's story. I think I see things differently. Let me describe how. I think I see things different. Let me describe how. Powerful, powerful tools for you. And then moving to action is the last one. This has two major components. And this is where it went wrong yesterday, even after we tried to recover, is with my pipeline meeting, is decide how you would decide. Well, we left that meeting with no decision about those price sheets. But we did get to a point where we could understand and tolerate and respect each other. And then we got to document the decisions and follow up. How will we make a decision? How will you do what? Who will do what when? And how will you follow up? These are actually sometimes overlooked statements there. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to skip the last video, Christian, if I could. And let's talk about some takeaways here. Learn to look. Takeaway number 1. Anytime you find yourself stuck, stop and think and ask yourself, what crucial conversations are we not holding or not holding well? Critical takeaway 1. What crucial conversations, learn to look, are we not holding or not holding well? And the second big one is make it safe. Establish mutual purpose and mutual respect. You know that I care about your goals, mutual respect. You know that I care about you. There's actually respect and purpose there. And this was so powerful there. Look at my 97. When we are able to establish safety, establish mutual purpose and mutual respect, research has shown that 97% of the time you will be heard. If I could tell you one thing that you could do in any leader-follower relationship that could give you a 97% of success, you would agree, you would like that, wouldn't you? 97% of the time, if you are able to establish mutual purpose and mutual respect, you will get heard. That for me is a good one. And when I find things going south or left or a place that I couldn't imagine, if I go back to those types of things, I can always have a good starting off point. And then that's what usually happens when we're in these situations. We see it going south. We see somebody getting defensive. The salesman had no idea that the accountant had all that pressure, right? He was surprised that he reacted that way. Wait a minute here. That person is not safe. Back it up. Go back to safe, mutual purpose, mutual respect, and then open up your eyes and learn to look where it's starting to deviate again, and how that might. And you might need to do that a couple more times. Here's what's fun about this: is candor is never ever the problem when it comes to crucial conversations. Okay. Thank you, Christian. People never become defensive about what you're saying. People become defensive about why they think you're saying that. How powerful is that? People don't come defensive about what you're saying. They come defensive about why they think what you're saying. Why they think what you're saying. This is why we need to go deeper into our story and their story, because if they aren't able to express why they think I'm saying this, we're never going to get to a new path, a new course, a new option. Candor is never the problem. It's not what you say, it's what they think you said, what they think you mean. So, okay. It's not intent. It's the intent, not the content, that provokes defensiveness. First, purify your intent. Powerful statement. Know yourself. Second, reassure and mutual purpose, mutual respect, peace. So purify your intent and reassure purpose and respect. It's intent, not content. Emotions just don't happen. Let's rewind on that. Claim number 1, you are the only one to create emotions. Claim number 2 is once you create emotions, you have only 2 options. You can act them out or you can be acted on by them. Powerful, powerful statements there. So what I want to do is I want to give you I want to read a little example of a story. Maria's story, if you will. Guess not. Marie was a copywriter who is currently being held hostage to some pretty strong emotions. She and her colleague, Louis, just received the latest draft of a proposal with their boss. During the meeting, they were supposed to jointly present their latest ideas. But when Marie paused to take a breath, Louis took over the presentation, making almost all of the points that they had come up together. When the boss turned to Marie for input, there was nothing for her to say. Marie has been feeling humiliated and angry throughout this whole project. First, Louis took their suggestions to the boss and discussed them behind her back. Secondly, he completely monopolized the presentation. Consequently, Marie believes that Louis is downplaying her contribution because she's the only woman on the team. She's getting fed up with the good old boys mentality. So what does she do? She doesn't want to appear offensive. So most of the time, she says nothing and just does her job. However, she does manage to assert herself by occasionally getting in a sarcastic jabs about the way she's being treated. Sure, I can get you a printout for you. Should I get up and get your coffee and whip up a bunk cake while I'm at it? She mutters and rolls her eyes as she exits the room. You're laughing because you've heard that, right? Lois, in turn, finds Marie's cheap shots and sarcasm puzzling. He's not sure what has Marie upset, but he's beginning to despise her smug attitude, hostile reactions, and most everything he does. As a result, when the two work together, you could cut the tension with a knife. So what's Marie to do? What's Marie to do in that situation? What story is she telling herself? She is the victim, isn't it? And you can see she's got a pretty good case, doesn't she? She's got a pretty good case. Can you imagine how that conversation is going to start out? Now, how is he going to start the conversation? And despite your behavior, your cheap shots, your sarcasm, you've been constantly your jabs. It's hard to do these amazing things, and you are getting in the way. Something like that. Because what does he see? His story is over here. She's telling her story. What's his story as well? He's a victim as well, right? So she's painting him as the villain, right? And vice versa. So when they sit down to meet, if they'll have no hope of finding a solution unless they recognize the story that they're each telling themselves about the other process. Here's what's so amazing about our emotions. It's not an if-then result. Just because I tell my story, it doesn't mean I have this feeling, doesn't mean I have to behave that way, right? You know your caboose theory, right? So we all know what makes Marie mad. Where should Marie start? She needs to start out by first find out what feelings come from, where the feelings are coming from for the first place. So when we examine that, she's avoiding and she's masking, right? Taking cheap shots and letting it squirt out. What is causing Marie's feelings in the first place? Right? Good old boys club, right? Being mistreated. Her ideas taken advantage of. She's being marginalized and mistreated and so forth. So, but here's the thing is when she has that story, all right? And before she gets to she adds meaning to that story that she's telling herself on what she observed. So it wasn't that fact that she observed those things. They're true, right? But is there another reason for those actions, those observations that she's had? Okay? Well, for her, she ascribes meaning to Lois's behavior, doesn't she? That's the very important step here. When you see those, observe those facts, and then you ascribe meaning to that powerful statement that comes in and says, is there another reason a reasonable, rational person would behave the way Lewis is behaving? So it allows us to take a different approach than the meaning that we automatically go to when we observe certain behaviors. She was making a guess at the motives of Lewis's behavior. We also then, she goes right into judgment, right? Good or bad. Lewis is bad. Then based on her story, her body and emotions take over. Here's the good news, that we and only we are telling ourselves the story. No one else knows the story that Marie was telling ourselves. And we can take back control of our own emotions by telling a different story. We can find a way to control the stories we tell by rethinking and retelling them. We can master our emotions and therefore master our crucial conversations. Until we tell ourselves a different story, we cannot break the loop. With other possibilities, what other possibilities could be the explanations for what Marie observed? Now remember, we're not saying she didn't observe those things. We're not saying that those things didn't really happen. But what's another possible story that could Marie have told herself about her situation? She could have made an excuse. He's ignorant. He just has no idea. He was raised this way. He doesn't have any sensibilities about him. Lewis is just ignorant. Powerful. So recognizing self, right? And understanding, you know what? I've been burned by past. The 3 sales jobs I had before, it was, and you know what? And I know how, and I'm going right into that rut again, right? So it could be that she's saying, okay, wait a minute here. I felt this before. Is this a rut for me? It could be that Lewis is an insecure person, and he's over his head to begin with. And as we mentioned, it could be that he and her are both protecting from the past, right? Victim, villain, or helpless. Those are the stories we tell until we tell ourselves a different story. This important step that we talked about, until we tell our different story, the weight is against us. It's a heavy road. There's a lot of potholes if we don't tell ourselves a different story. So what I'd like to do, and Cameron, can you help me out with this? Can you hand out this sheet, please? Can you leave one for me? So think back to that crucial conversation that you are having, you need to have, or maybe are avoiding. Going back to the beginning. Thank you, sir. Going back to that crucial conversation that you need to have, maybe are avoiding, or maybe are right in the middle of. So this is the takeaway. So these are the 6 skills that we talked about in very brief terms. If we had a little bit more time, we would actually work these conversations out on each area, okay, and build the conversation. But what I would like you to do is grab your pen, and I want you to fill in the blue section on the right. Okay, and we're going to talk about these real quick. Let me hold. Matt, I have 3 minutes till. Okay. Thanks, Cameron. You're a good man. So start with the heart. What's the skill that's associated with this? It's a good takeaway. I keep this as a little bit cheat sheet on my desk. Focus on what you really want. So think about that conversation. What do you really want out of this crucial conversation? And what's the crucial question that we need to be asking? What am I acting like I really want? That's a powerful statement. Okay, what do I want? And then what am I acting like? Sometimes they're not congruent. What do I really want for me, for others, and for this relationship? We're leaders. We get our power from relationships. If we want to be a good leader in this situation, we need to have a good relationship. If we don't talk this out and get to the root of this, I am not practicing good leadership. Leaders take responsibility for relationships. I think that's why leaders ask for forgiveness so much. Write that in the section. Answer, what am I really want, and what do I really want for others, myself, and the relationship? Learn to look. Look for when the conversation becomes crucial, before she stands up and puts her sweater on and heads for the door. Am I going to silence or violence? Is that other individual going to silence or violence? Make it safe. Apologize when appropriate and establish mutual purpose. It's a big deal. We're leaders. We're supposed to be in lead, but sometimes being lead is sometimes being the first to apologize. I'm not asking you to make things up. I'm asking you to apologize for what's really deep inside, because guess what? The other person can figure that out. They'll know if you're really being honest or not. Only apologize for what you mean to apologize for. Apologize when appropriate. Sometimes the mistakes that I've seen leaders is they go overboard and they apologize for the world. And I'm sorry that all of this happened. No, that doesn't help the situation. Apologize for your stuff, what you put in the mix. When they see your vulnerability, when they see your leadership, if you will, they're going to be more, and they might not respond initially, just like, right? Just like the accountant situation. He was still hammering away, right? It took him a couple times to the individual to really believe that this was a safe place. Have I established mutual purpose, and am I maintaining mutual respect? Number 4, my story, my path. Separate the fact from story and tell your story. Marie observed a certain set of facts, and she told herself, good old boys club, it's got to stop. It always happens. Until she tells herself a different story, she's going to have a hard time getting to that place of mutual respect and mutual purpose, and a place where things can actually move forward. What role am I playing in the problem? What would a reasonable, rational person act this way? And am I open to others' views? That sometimes catches me. Man, I'm so convinced I'm right. I mean, I don't know about you. Have you ever been right, in a conversation and you knew it? You're right, it's right. And it's just a matter of this conversation is not going to end until they understand how right I am. And you know what? I got perseverance. I can be the last person standing, right? If this is an endurance club, what happens? If the person then convalesces and goes to silence, that will show up. If they aren't able to connect and dialogue it out, silence will just become acted out. Those Marie's jabs and defensiveness and sarcasm does show up. 5, explore others' path. Ask, paraphrase, and build. And am I actively exploring others' views and takes actions? Decide how we make decisions, and how we follow up. Leadership. You have taken on and accepted the role of leadership, and you've probably been doing it all your life. And unfortunately, there are certain parts of leadership that have to be learned. These are not intuitive skills. These are not innate skills that we are just born with. It might become easier for some than others, but learning how to have great conversations where you're able to get closer to what your story is and what the other story is, and show amazing moxie and leadership in those moments where putting your apology out there, apologizing for what's appropriate, still staying committed to the relationship even though you're getting nailed by you don't understand, that's not the case situation, you're treating me bad. For me, it helps me to know that if I can recognize the story they're telling themselves is I'm the villain here. Okay, that helps me. Okay, so I'm sensing that I am, you're struggling with the fact that you're not believing that I really want you to be successful. Okay, help me understand that, because I have a different opinion regarding that, but I want to know what you have to say. Powerful statements. And here's the funny thing about this, and I've done a number of these. And for those coaches in the room, you'd appreciate that. Dan, I don't have the time or the energy to go to this level all the time with everything. You don't have to. These crucial moments don't happen all the time, but we need to be prepared and have the skills to do them well. And when we do them well, it's amazing how smooth things go by. Then there's a great book by Stephen M. Covey called The Speed of Trust. Then you really have a very efficient and effective machine, organization, if you will, when you have enough of these deep, strong relationships built on mutual respect and mutual purpose, and when you work through difficult situations. That becomes just like a muscle that's in the weight room. It gets broken down, it becomes stronger, and that relationship becomes stronger. So I would dare say, Dan, I don't have the time to do this. We don't have the time not to. Because if we avoid it, it's going to show its ugly head. And unfortunately, the worst possible times. Any questions, comments, or thoughts, or things that resonate with you? It makes sense, doesn't it? These are things that we know, right? These are things that we've felt and experienced. And these are things that we've done right? We've done this well on occasions. But on some occasions, it's been a struggle. This course and this book, and there's a whole series of books, helped me provide a framework so that I can not be so susceptible to my own stuff. Because when we take on the mantle of leadership, we don't leave our stuff behind. That's what's unfortunate about power. I don't believe power corrupts. We're already corrupt before we took on the mantle of leadership. Unfortunately, the power that comes with leadership, it just enables our own corruption. It enables our own sin. It enables our own stuff. So our shadow side becomes more evident when we take on mantle of leadership. These books, these skills help hold me accountable to the people that matter, to the organization that I want to be successful with, and the responsibility that we've taken on. Amen to that? All right. Let's pray. Lord, we just humbly commit our time, our talent, our wisdom, but our heart to this awesome responsibility that is leadership. We take it seriously. It is overwhelming at times. We desire to follow your example, but the confessions of selfish, incongruous. We are selfish. We have our own needs. And in those moments, we ask, Lord, graciously fill us up. Make us an example of the model of the best leader in the world, that we might serve, but we might not do it out of a sense of obligation, not out of a sense of duty, but out of a desire that comes deep inside of our hearts. And that desire is us delighting in you and your will in our lives. We ask to be leaders that are truly reflective of the heart of Jesus. Help us, mold us, give us the patience, give us the perseverance, give us the grace to be all that you've asked us to be, so that we can be able to take on the responsibilities and the charge that you've given us. We pray for each individual in this room. I thank you for them. I thank you for who they are in my life and how they've guided me at least a portion of my life and showed me example of your Son, Jesus Christ. And I pray that you'll bless them, bless their work, bless your mission, bless the mission that you've entrusted to them, and as they walk this path to be godly leaders. We pray this in your most holy and precious name. Amen.